From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, this is From the South, and I'm Carla Gonzalez. The price of oil has dropped by at least 4% as representatives from the 15 member states of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries meet in Austria to discuss cutting oil output. Despite pressure from the US to keep prices low, the de facto leader of OPEC, Saudi Arabia, said that output needs to be cut to ensure prices don't fall due to a predicted drop in demand next year. However, the Saudi energy minister suggested that the cut may be smaller than previously anticipated.
Did you recommend a cut?
Well, the cut, yes, but we haven't discussed the number.
Is there a number?
Not yet. Work in progress.
But you recommended a cut.
Huh?
Did you recommend a cut?
We all did.
Oh,
There's
you
a
all did.
consensus.
Just ahead of the OPEC meeting, leaders of two major producing countries met in Moscow. Venezuela's President Nicolás Maduro held talks with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Maduro took to Twitter to report on this meeting.
We're walking through the streets of Moscow. After a successful meeting with President Putin, we had many positive agreements in several areas such as financial, oil, defense, commercial, and many more. Tomorrow we will continue signing new great agreements. Right now it's already late in the evening. It's minus 10 degrees Celsius here. Warm greetings to the Venezuelan people. We will keep in touch and we will keep fighting for Venezuela, our motherland.
Our correspondent Hans Deloro explains what happened during this meeting.
During this visit, bilateral meetings will be held on the outskirts of Moscow between both presidents. The aim is to uphold and explore mutually beneficial trade agreements, especially with the Russian company Gazprom, whilst bolstering military and cultural relations. President Putin has condemned foreign powers in their effort to devitalize Venezuela, such as the United States, but also countries in Latin America. He also hopes that the upcoming elections in Venezuela on the 9th of December run smoothly and peacefully. It's worth remembering that President Maduro was here just over a year ago and called for ditching the dollar. So far, this is all we know, and we'll bring you more as we find out.
Our correspondent Hans Deloro from Russia. Students in Colombia are planning more protests in the coming hours over the lack of funding for public universities. Students, along with trade unions and other social movements, have been protesting for weeks against the government of President Iván Duque. Many of the demonstrations have been met with fierce repression from the police, as we see it on camera right now. The students say the government has the money to boost the education budget, but it lacks the political will. Thousands of women marched in Argentina on Wednesday evening against a court's decision on the rape and murder of the teenager Lucia Perez. The women marched through Buenos Aires as part of a nationwide women's strike after the two accused men were found not guilty last week. The court said their guilt could not be proven despite the fact that they offered drugs to Lucia and took their home. Feminist groups say this is additional proof of the lack of gender perspective within the judiciary.
We are again demanding justice, to say that we will continue to confront this patriarchal justice.
And some of the women staged a die-in protest to highlight one of the slogans of this meeting. We are all Lucia, that's what they said. The court found the two men guilty of only drug possession. The case has caused outrage in Argentina, where the women's movement has grown increasingly in recent years. Lucia's mother spoke to the crowd and told them that the court had violated her 16-year-old daughter after she was dead.
My daughter was raped after dying. After her death, my daughter was raped. They raped her to death. They drugged her to death. The judges were the final ones to rape her. The judges raped her with the sentence they handed out. That's what the judiciary in Mar del Plata have done.
Argentinian journalist and activist Jimena Cincha talked to us about the case and also about the feminist movements in Latin America.
Menos was born in 2015 in Argentina because of another femicide against teenagers named Chiara Paez, and that is the movement is growing around the continent and around the world, and that's why we are thinking that this is not going to stop. It is going to grow, no matter if judicial authorities or the government are not taking enough policies to protect women in our countries.
Also in Poland, women's organizations have protested against what they call macho fascism in politics at the COP24 meeting. One organization called the Women Gender Constituency Group used a performance to protest against macho culture. They say the conservative trend is affecting people around the world and call for women to rise up against it. World leaders and officials are meeting in Poland for a 2-week-long climate change conference.
Because we're very much concerned that in these halls and as it is all over the world, we see the rise of macho fascism, right-wing politicians, right-wing governments.
And while climate negotiators continue discussions behind closed doors at the conference, climate change activists have put their own mock awards to bring attention to the insincerity and hypocrisy of some of the participants. The mock Fossil Fuel of the Day award was unanimously given to Saudi Arabia. In other news, at least 4 people have been killed in the Dominican Republic in an explosion at a plastic-producing factory. Fire crews and the army rushed to the scene in the capital, Santo Domingo, to search for anyone trapped in the debris. The head of the fire brigade said the blast was caused by a gas leak inside the plant. President Danilo Medina promised support for the families of the victims. Classes were suspended at schools in the vicinity. Cuba's telecommunications company Etexa is releasing 4 mobile data packages on Thursday. This will be the first time in 5 years that Cubans will have access to internet outside of public Wi-Fi areas around the island. President Miguel Díaz-Canel says he supports greater connectivity to boost the economy and continue defending the Cuban Revolution. CARICOM leaders have signed a declaration to move towards full free movement in a single market economy within the next 3 years. It's one of several resolutions passed during the 18th Special CARICOM Summit in Trinidad, which wrapped up on Tuesday. Caribbean leaders also agreed to expand the categories of skilled workers free to move within the region. There were also consensus on Haiti's full integration by 2020.
We considered the implementation plan for Haiti's full participation in the CSME, and we welcome the assistance that that country will receive from the European Development Fund in their efforts to become compliant with the measures to ensure that they can participate in the CSME.
We are cognizant that there is about $47 billion in savings within the community, and that we need to find a way of unlocking those savings such that our businesses and our governments can have access to affordable capital, to borrow at affordable rates, while at the same time giving our citizens and companies better options for greater returns on their money than they're currently getting from keeping that money in savings accounts.
The Caribbean island of Nevis has received a cash injection to help improve the delivery of its dialysis services. Taiwan has donated $167,000. The funding is intended for dialysis machines and water systems. This means that patients will no longer have to travel to St. Kitts for treatment. More stories coming up. We'll be back.
The ruling world order has always subjugated the masses. But who are the actors behind every move? What are their real interests? We analyze every move on Critical Move. Weekdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Churches in Peru have come together to form a joint initiative to save the Peruvian Amazon rainforest. This initiative comes a year after the Pope expressed concern about the alarming deforestation of the Amazon, which covers almost two-thirds of the country. The Peruvian Amazon has in recent years experienced high rates of deforestation due to gold mining. This is a key factor behind global warming, accounting for around 15% of annual emissions of heat-trapping gases.
I think that we're doing something in looking to create awareness about how important the Amazon is. Not just for those who live there, but for the whole country. And not just for the country, but for the whole world, really.
Unaccompanied minors from the migrant caravan have spoken on their hopes for a better life in the United States. One of the cases is a teen from Honduras who was forced to flee after a gang killed his brother and threatened his life. He's hoping to find work in the U.S. Another is a young teenage girl from El Salvador who escaped an abusive family and hopes to reunite with a relative. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump has justified his hardline policy against the caravan because he believes they are criminals. They are part of a group of more than 7,000 migrants at the border, with hundreds more making their way from Mexico.
My mother said that I called me. I explained the circumstance I was going through. I was assaulted. They beat me up. They robbed me, took my clothes, beat me up badly. Last time, they threatened me. Those who killed my brother kept threatening me too. So I said I want to come here because I was at risk there. They helped me out. They pray for me. Thanks to God, I am good and at the border.
Mum didn't know that I was abused by my grandmother. I told Mum that I wanted to come here. My sister also helped me. She said she would. My mum also helped me to come here. I told her that I was scared to be in El Salvador, and once in the United States, I would help her by sending money.
Newly inaugurated Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador has confirmed that he will be speaking to President Donald Trump about the migrant crisis.
President Trump sent us congratulations on Monday, and we are maintaining a permanent communication. And it is good. Relations are good. We will likely get in touch with President Trump for this special matter, the one that has to do with the migratory phenomenon.
Still in Mexico, the capital city's first female mayor has been sworn in. As a member of the country's left-wing Morena party, Claudia Sheinbaum has vowed to put an end to the persecution of the country's opposition. The new mayor is also a scientist and was part of a UN climate change panel that won the Nobel Peace Prize in 2007.
Therefore, the first thing we will do is stop the abuse. From now on, democracy and political freedom are restored. Never again will we exercise or allow persecution and direct or stimulate violence against those who think and act in a way different to whoever is governing.
Ecuador's National Assembly has received the formal resignation of Vice President María Alejandra Vicuña. Our correspondent in Quito, Denise Herrera, has the details.
After the resignation of the ex-vice president of Ecuador, Maria Alejandra Vicuña, several reactions has been generated in the National Assembly. Lawmakers conclude that Vicuña has to face the justice. In light of these events, also, legal experts express that the Constitution said that the president or vice president can be called to trial if they are in duties. So an impeachment here is not an option because Vicuña resigned, so she is not working more as vice president. Also, experts said that there is a vacuum in the Constitution because the Constitution do not specify how a vice president should submit a resignation. So they say that the institution which appointed her as a vice president is the responsible to accept the resignation. However, the National Assembly, the president of the National Assembly, Elizabeth Cabezas, has confirmed that that Vicuña resignation will be discussed by the National Assembly tomorrow during the plenary session. So we will see Moreno's decision in the coming days. It's all for now. Back to you at the studios.
Thank you very much, Denise. And she got also responses to Vicuña's resignation from members of the opposition and the Citizens Revolution Party in Quito.
The current Ecuadorian constitution establishes that it is not possible to continue with trials to ex-political leaders once they have ended their duties. Once Ms. Vicuña has resigned, the political trial will not be applicable. However, her responsibilities in administrative and criminal liabilities are to continue.
This behind the departure of the Vice President Vicuña, for sure. The same government of Lenin Moreno, which withdrew its support. It was they who in the beginning supported her. They postulated her as vice presidential candidate in an internal vote, and they supported her with the social Christians who then elected her. They have to assume responsibility as well for what's to come now that she's left office.
5 years after his death, the spirit of Nelson Mandela lives on in the Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela. The Latin American country paid tribute to the renowned freedom fighter and statesman at the National Theatre in Caracas. The South African ambassador used the event to express his country's desire to deepen strong bilateral relations. He added that the roots of conflict and hostility lie in poverty, exclusion, and marginalization. We're taking one last break, but stay with us.
Our actions have an impact on the environment. It's our responsibility to change for the sake of our planet. Let's be part of this transition. Watch, preserve, and protect your Green Zone. Wednesdays, only on Telesur.
Welcome back. China has condemned the arrest of Huawei's chief financial officer, Meng Wanzhou, by Canadian authorities on behalf of the United States, which is seeking her extradition to face unspecified charges. A statement by the country's foreign ministry has demanded an explanation from the US and Canada. It added that the arrest was a violation of Meng's human rights and demanded her immediate release. The US had been investigating Huawei for alleged violations of sanctions against Iran.
We demand the other side to provide an explanation for the detention and for the immediate release of the relevant person. The detention, without giving any reason, violates the human rights of the person detained.
Meng is the daughter of the founder of Huawei, one of the largest telecommunications equipment companies in the world. It recently overtook Apple to become the second biggest smartphone maker after Samsung. Meng's arrest has also put doubts on the 90-day trade truce that was agreed between Donald Trump and Chinese President Xi Jinping at the G20 summit in Argentina. In other news, a car bomb blast outside a police station in Iran has left at least 4 people dead and dozens injured. According to sources, a suicide bomber placed explosives inside a truck and blew himself up after being stopped at the police headquarters. No group has confirmed responsibility for the attack so far. The government of Burundi has ordered the United Nations Human Rights Council to shut its office in the country within 2 months. Burundi has been at loggerheads with the UN since 2016, when the UN released a report warning of a risk of genocide, claiming systematic human rights abuses by the government. Burundi has been embroiled in a political crisis since President Pierre Nkurunziza announced his candidacy for a controversial third term in April 2015. Participants in the Global Forum on Migration and Development in Morocco are trying to convince member countries to sign the UN Migration Pact. The non-binding agreement is set to be adopted next week. The pact has been facing growing opposition from countries such as the United States, Australia, Hungary, and the Dominican Republic. It identifies human rights principles and suggests ways for territories to cope with migration. It also prohibits arbitrary detentions and only allows arrests as a last resort.
There are a lot of people still hesitating, who don't want to see that it's a compact for safe, orderly and regular immigration. It has nothing to do with an invitation to illegal immigration. No, these are clear positions against illegal migration.
The United Nations has expressed its concerns over Denmark's plan to transfer foreign criminals to a tiny island used for animal disease research. The UN's human rights chief, Michelle Bachelet, said housing up to 100 criminals on the island would further increase their vulnerability. The migrants cannot be deported back to their home countries because they are at risk of torture or execution, according to Bachelet. The Danish parliament is set to vote on the proposal later this month.
There are difficulties encountered in returning migrants to their countries of origins when they're not accepted as a refugee. But they should be addressed in a safe and human way, manner, but on the basis of course, individual assessment, and not in ways that will increase harm, which this plan is very likely to do, because we have seen the negative impact of such policies of isolation and should not replicate these policies.
The UN Children's Fund has warned that about 1.5 million children in the Central African Republic are in desperate need of humanitarian aid. UNICEF says that children in the Central African Republic are in danger of being recruited by armed groups or becoming victims of sexual violence. Since the president was overthrown in 2013, the country has been plagued with violence and armed clashes between Christian and Muslim groups.
5 years of armed conflict means that the children are in need of aid in essentially all areas today. They are in need of aid from birth until their early childhood in order to have access to primary health and nutrition care. When they are a little older, they need to go to school. They need to be protected against being recruited by armed groups.
A campaign has been launched in Spain to end the discrimination against the Roma people and to highlight their influence in the country's culture.
Romani people are requesting
Mírame a los ojos.
for society to learn about the historical influence they have had on Spanish culture, from literature to politics. It is still very necessary to raise awareness about all the contributions we have made. They are still unknown. This is a chapter that has been erased from history books.
Una lección que nunca aprendiste porque nunca te la enseñaron.
A campaign is highlighting in a book and a video all those forgotten names in the Romani community and the anecdotes that were never told. The goal is to understand the Romani culture.
The lack of knowledge generates prejudice, and prejudice generates distrust. So we want to end with these misconceptions by sharing information so that we can all live together in equality.
The Romani People Association launched the campaign. They say there is still a lot to do for the Romani community to be included in society, although a lot of progress has been made in the last years in contrast to other European countries.
There are governments that are spreading messages against the Romani people, racist messages. This is something we worry about.
But to fight racism, information is key.
We need to take our history to schools. We are already working on that. We need to involve business and companies. We need society to be involved in this fight of equality.
This campaign is aimed at ending with discrimination and the obstacles the Romani community has faced for the last 6 centuries.
Before we go, we have a unique story from Nepal. Young people have created a map of the Dead Sea using plastic bags. Their goal is to set a new international record and raise awareness of the use of plastic, which is polluting the world's oceans. Volunteers tied 100,000 used plastic bags of different colors to a 20-meter-long metal grid shaped like the Dead Sea. The slogan for the record attempt was "One Dead Sea is enough for us." That brings us to the end of this news brief, but as you know, this and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telesurenglish.net. For our viewers in Africa, we are on StarSat channel 461 in South Africa and 539 in Nigeria, and we're on social media as well. I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching Telesur.